Well, good evening. I would like to call the April 21st Douglas, Mass. Board of Selectmen meeting to order. I'd like to do so with a roll call vote.
Tim Bonin, aye.
Dave Cortez, aye.
Al Davis, aye.
Mike Hughes, aye.
Kevin Morris, aye. All right, I do not have any announcements this evening that I can think of. So we can move right into the first item, which is to ratify the town electricity aggregation program bid and possible votes. And I know that Selectman Bonin has been very actively involved in this process. So can you share your experience with us, Tim?
Very briefly, I had an email from Matt that I didn't quite understand, so I'm not certain I know exactly what can be shared at this point. What I can tell you is our aggregation process is now complete, and I think we have a 3-year term. The rates will be announced, I believe, late November. It's been an interesting, I don't think I learned a lot from it, but I think there is safety in numbers, so I think the town should continue to certainly move in the direction that we have been moving in regards to electricity prices, and it would certainly encourage each resident to take a peek at what the town offers, and perhaps, if need be, look to an individual agreement with a provider.
Was that as beneficial to you as all of your Central Mass planning meetings that you attend?
Oh, man.
They're on par. I'm just glad to serve the town of Douglas.
We're happy to have you there.
Yeah, thank you.
I can
Was
say,
there anything else that I should have included in that?
no, we were both ghosts on the meeting, you know. Tim at least asked a question.
Was it right at the end?
Yeah.
Did he
pretty
ask
much.
the question? Yes.
So the question he asked was, you just sent me a 48-page document that's 44 pages of red line, and you want me to figure this out in 15 minutes? Long story short, Good Energy has been editing and updating their master form contract for power purchases this entire year. And so it's different from the contract the last time we did an aggregation.
It is.
3 years ago. But it's much improved, it's enhanced, and there are a lot of Department of Public Utilities requirements that have come down the last 3 years that have been incorporated into the contract. What the public needs to know is that buying any source of energy right now is an art, not a science. We've all seen the reports of oil prices actually going into the negative for May delivery in the futures markets in New York, for at least for a day. I don't know where they closed today. They opened negative. But the point is if you have the flexibility right now to go and buy a lot of energy or energy-related product, you're going to get a fantastic deal if you can do it right now. The town's energy aggregation contract doesn't kick in until January. So the assumption the market's making in pricing energy futures is that we'll be back close to normal by January. So the prices aren't going to reflect these huge, deep discounts. Consumers at home may see various prices offered to them by different energy providers. They do anyway. People get solicited at home, on the phone. You get people that sometimes even knock on doors. The bottom line is this: your energy aggregation program in Douglas does not charge anything to join the program or to leave the program. It's free entry and exit. A lot of the discount programs that you'll get right now, you have to lock in for a long term, and you may have a large penalty if you leave it early that offsets any savings you may have realized by getting the cheap price. So that's why the price information is being withheld. I think Tim and I, we've watched the whole process unfold. It was a competitive process. We had multiple bids, and the lowest bidder was awarded the contract, which was, I don't think it's a secret, it was Constellation. But it would be nice to have your vote so that we're all good.
Any further discussion? Or-
No, I'm good. Hal, you got anything?
No, sounds good.
How about you, Mr. Hughes?
No, it sounds good to me as well.
I move that we accept the electrical aggregate contract as presented.
We can accept the concert too, if you'd like.
That too, after
All
the
right.
contract, we'll do the concert.
Okay. Anybody want to second it?
I will.
All right, so the motion was made by Dave, seconded by Mike. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Bone and I.
Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Morris, aye. Okay, the next
Now, if
thing,
we only had oil storage tank availability, we could get paid for storing oil.
Hal, you
Al,
don't
you're
have
killing me.
that?
You know that the wholesale price on gasoline right now is going to be $1.
If
Right?
that,
If
if that.
Hal, have you got room up at the farm for a couple of tanks to get it put in?
Sure.
I volunteer my property for tank storage as long as I have use of the tanks while there's
Yeah,
product
same here.
being stored.
You're gonna see muscle car sales going through the roof pretty soon.
Exactly.
So, all right, so the next we have is administrator's report and COVID-19 updates.
So we have not had a confirmed positive result for COVID-19 for 9 days now.
Excellent.
I misspoke, 8 days in the town of Douglas. As you know, we're supposedly in the middle of the quote-unquote surge that's been predicted across the Commonwealth. We've had 2 days in a row now of just about 1,550 cases, new cases across the Commonwealth. There are definitely hot spots. A while back, the prediction was we'd be at 2,500 new cases a day in the middle of the surge, and we're not realizing that, probably due to a lot of the social distancing that policies that have been put into place. But we still have a ways to go, and as you know, the governor announced today that schools will be closed through the end of the school year. There's a number of ramifications to what comes next. What comes next is probably going to be the building of a contact tracing organization and effort across the Commonwealth, and Partners in Health is the entity that has been selected by the governor and his team to put this thing together, and as you know, they practice this epidemiological control all across the globe, so they have experience with it in Africa and the Caribbean and other places. They're going to hire some, I think they have about 200 people already hired, they're going to up to 1,700 people to actually build and administer this system in cooperation with the local boards of health. There's a presentation done at 3 o'clock this afternoon, which is probably the most reassuring presentation that has occurred at any point in this series of events. They're highly organized. It's very technology dependent. The people that are working on the technology have a lot of experience. The so-called MAVEN, I finally found out what the acronym means. It's the Massachusetts Virtual Epidemiologic Network. Rolls off the tongue. Somebody at Madison Avenue made a lot of money with that one. But MAVEN is the record of record. So it is the master database, and they don't want anything to corrupt, damage, or defile that database, because that's where all the really key information is stored. They're going to build a contact tracing database that is going to communicate bidirectionally with MAVEN with proper safeguards, but the information is going to share back and forth. We already do in Douglas what they're trying to do across the rest of the state. So our town nurse, Agnieszka Podstavka, has been on top of this. So when she gets a positive result, she's building the contact list, she's calling all the contacts, she's checking on symptoms, she's asking people to quarantine. And many people in Douglas have been very willing to just stay home if they've been in contact with somebody who's been sick. And then on the opposite side, we're providing support, whether it's laundry service at Willowbrook or the meals. That's keeping people from circulating, and it's keeping people home. That is one of the 4 pillars of controlling the spread of the virus. So that's what they're going to try to do now statewide, and contact tracing is a critical element of it. So as I've said before, if you are technologically savvy and you want to participate, they're still hiring. You can go to the Partners in Health website. All of this is going to take time to roll out. I think that's why schools were called off. And it's also why we should probably think, there are two reasons why we should think that a September date might be best for town meeting as opposed to trying to pull this off in June. One of them is we may not be allowed to gather in groups until the summer anyway. The second reason is not our legislators from Worcester County, but legislators from the western side of the state have been telling their town administrators and their town leadership, their boards of selectmen and their finance committees, that it is very unlikely that the Massachusetts legislature is going to have a consensus revenue budget by the end of June. It's just not going to happen. And the facts and figures I shared with you the last time we were here, a week ago, indicate why that's true. If the state is some 17% short on its own revenue projections and is looking to the federal government to provide liquidity, then there's a whole bunch of contingencies there that need to fall into place before we can do a budget. So I'll reiterate the message, and as bluntly as I said it last week, I'll say it even more bluntly this week. No one should figure on a budget or any sort of foundational collective bargaining analysis until we're out of this mess, because it's not worth the paper it's printed on. There's a lot of economic and financial sorting that's going to have to occur when this is over and the economy starts up again. And we'd be best to begin to plan on a September date. That would be, we can have that conversation in a couple of seconds, Mr. Chairman. I had a couple other things I wanted to go through. One of the things in our budget is we got our quote today for our property casualty premiums. We've been quoted a 10.3% increase. Some of that's claims activity, some of that is elections we've made for coverage options, but it's mostly claims activity. We actually, I hate to use the word deserve, but we probably were in line for a much larger increase due to the claim that occurred at the school. It was all, however, $800,000, $900,000 due to the flood. And we've had 2 straight years in a row now, double-digit increases, and hopefully this will slow down. I haven't an exact number. I know that the number that was in the draft budget that was making its way through the process in the beginning of March is probably a little bit light, but not a lot, because I already factored in an increase. And I think we'll probably be 2/3 of the way there. But we're also looking probably at an increase for our Chubb account, Chubb, C-H-U-B-B. They are the insurance provider for our injured on duty. We also had a claim there, so we might see an increase on that side too. So, but there was room in the budget to accommodate all of that. But I know that's one of the major pieces we talk about. That premium we typically pay in full to get the early payment discount of 3%. So the July budget, if we have to do a month-to-month budget, July will be a very large number because we have both our retirement contribution and our property and casualty insurance premium all paid, it all gets paid in 1 month.
Question, are we limited to a 1/12 budget?
No, so we actually have, the wording of it in the statute now is at least 1/12.
At least 1/12. Okay.
So we cannot cut it. One other thing is we've received a very lengthy report from the arborist for National Grid with respect to a tree removal and tree trimming program in Douglas. Now, we've not been shy about asking National Grid for help, and over the past year, the town has spent many thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money to try to alleviate the threat to power lines and streets from a lot of the dead trees that we have. I never shy away from being critical, so I can't shy away from being very pleasantly surprised. National Grid is going to take care of some 284 trees all across the town of Douglas. Now, if we extrapolate from what we've already spent and how much work we got done over the last year, that's about $140,000 worth of tree work. So when you see that many trees changing around town, and it's a town that a lot of people care about and are interested in the trees on their streets, we want to have the guy come in and describe to the Board of Selectmen briefly, and we'll tell him that, what the program is. But I counted 62 trees on the list that are 24 inches or bigger in diameter. So they are very old,
Very big.
very big, and the vast majority of those are very dead. And we're not going to argue with the arborist. Most lay people can walk up to a tree and tell it it's dead. The arborist is really, really good at that. That's why they're an arborist. So, but we will take a good look at all of these things, those 62 oldest, just to be sure.
How many of those are up Manchog?
So flipping through the list very quickly, there's a lot on West Street
Yep.
of all sizes. Actually, a fair number on Gilboa. Main Street, no surprise, since it's such a big part of the town. A real lot on Southeast Main, so 2 pages. And then we're back to West Street for another 2 pages. So West, Franklin, South, Southeast, those are the big ones in terms of the volume that will come down. Much of that, I believe, is tied to three-phase power and the solar development, but not all of it is. Most of it is.
Good news.
That's all I had for you this evening. I think the work continues. Oh, I guess I should say this much. I think we're up to 128 individuals who participate in the meals program. The bus contract is in place, so the buses are running the meals out. The food service workers are back on the job and doing a lot of the work. I know there were more calls being made today, so we're getting deeper into the list. We went down to age 70 and above.
Good.
We're starting to get calls from town staff. So I think we've got a great little program going, little town, little program, but I think it means a lot to the people who are getting it. So that's all I have for you right now, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the folks at Littlebrook are always pleased to have us come in and drop food off, so they seem very happy. On the, under the open sessions, I kind of wanted to skip past the approved minutes and kind of dive back over to talking about town meeting. I mean, I would like to get the opinion of the town moderator and FinCom and see if they're in agreement, but I'm sitting in the same camp that Matt's in, is even if we were able to eke one into June, I think people would still be awful punchy to try and go into a enclosed space. And with revenues being uncertain and a budget coming from the state being uncertain, I just don't see where there would be a benefit to going to town meeting prior to September, at least in my mind.
I tend to agree. I'd ask Mr. Wojcik, is the state going to give us any idea by the end of June where we would be for revenues? Local aid?
Yeah, and that's where I'm not plugged into that scene. I'm translating hearsay to you from my colleagues out west who've sat with their legislators. But I think I've worked around legislators for a long time in another place, and I know where they're at. They don't have any good information themselves, so they are reluctant to commit when they don't want to be called to the carpet for not having the resources that they've committed. So I think it's all eyes point back to Washington at this point.
My gut tells me that it's, we have probably, I don't want to say a gap year, but we have some months before the state revenues start to drop precipitously, and then obviously everything rolls downhill, and it will eventually roll downhill to us. So I'm hoping that we have 1 year here of essentially equivalent local aid, cherry sheet aid, and then 2021 will probably be a whole new interesting world of fun.
Yeah, I think, so that will make it, it's calendar 21, that'll make it fiscal 22.
Yeah.
Is probably the real problem.
Right.
So I think we're definitely going to keep our powder dry and free cash. There's a hold on, unless it is a major life safety consideration for capital, we're just going to hold on to what we have, roll it all forward, and because we might desperately need it. And we have to act as if we will need every penny.
Right.
Yeah, it's back to the thought process pre-override.
Right.
Of we're just going to pause.
Right.
Well, having said that, thank God you're no longer dependent on it for operational expenses.
yeah,
I
if
think
that-
those towns, like the one I live in, who have such a huge dependence on free cash, are really kind of sweating this out. They will not be liquid.
Right.
No, if we hadn't passed that when we did, I think that we would not be in a pretty position moving into FY22.
Time for fiscal conservatism, if there ever was a time.
All right, so let's look at approved minutes from previous meetings and possible votes.
How do you want to get the feedback from FinCom at being a public body before you move on?
I'd like them to discuss it, obviously, put it as an agenda topic for FinCom to meet, and then just, get the consensus and the ruling from the chair and have them email it over.
All right, so we'll ask the chair to have a meeting, and we'll try to get everybody educated on Zoom, and we'll struggle through it, but we'll get it. The first time is always a struggle, people just have to get used to it. Once they're used to it, they're all set.
Or, we could even we would have time to invite them to a joint session and have them log into,
It might be the easiest thing to do.
yeah, why don't we do that for the next agenda? We'll invite FinCom.
Next week?
Yeah, we'll do a joint meeting. That makes it easier. What do you guys think? Hal?
Fine.
Tim?
Yeah, that works. I do have a question on collective bargaining. Check in with Mike.
Letter.
Works for me. What's sense to invite him to our meeting?
Thanks, Mike. So what's your question, Tim? Let her rip.
Well, I just, in light of Matt's report, I'm just curious as to where we are in regards to pursuing a teacher's contract. Are we continuing with that, or are we really keeping things close here?
I think they're waiting to see how this conversation goes. If I'm not mistaken, I think the chair of the school committee wanted to see what we were talking about tonight. If you're asking me, we have one municipal collective bargaining agreement that will expire this June as well. And I want to consult with Labor Council on it, but I think we should just hold everybody where they are until we can get some clarity as to what the budget process is going to look like. The alternative to doing that would be to go ahead and commit and then find yourself having to do huge layoffs because you have no other
Right.
way out of the problem. And that's no way to run a peanut butter factory, if you ask me. That's just terrible to do that. So everybody should just try to hang on to where you are, and I don't know what that means for the COLA, for a COLA. But it would be best to do short-term deals, get everybody frozen, and then have the collective bargaining already started so that you're not wasting time getting it started after. Right now, the DTA is already in talks, but that would be the most responsible thing to do. We had a whole bunch of very serious and thoughtful plans for that contract, but I don't think any of them are possible at this point.
Well,
And
I don't see how we could really, with revenues from the state being uncertain at best, I don't see how we could good faith bargain with anybody right now. We don't know what our revenue numbers are going to look like. I would say we just pause everything.
I think you hit the nail on the head. At this point, trying to bargain something that's going to result in a net increase on our budget, with the future as uncertain as it is, it's going to force layoffs down the road if things are as bad as some of us predict they will be. I don't think that's a responsible position to take for anybody, for either side. Obviously, I can't speak for the other side, but I would definitely endorse just holding off. Everybody go back to their corners and take a breather till we figure out where we are financially.
yeah. That's not a hard bargain to drive right now. We all, as public servants, recognize that we are fortunate to still be working at a time when a lot of other people are stressed. So that's the lesson we should all take, just for a little while, and make sure that we know that we can pay the bills before we start making more bills.
Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, I'd like the answers.
No, makes sense.
Okay. Is there anything else that, any other questions or anything before we get into minutes?
We're not going into executive session tonight?
No, sir. On the advice of the erudite Richard Bowen, Esquire.
From his lips to God's ears. We'll listen to him.
I would follow him anywhere. Tim, I'm very peaked. I'm trying to read what's written on the side of the whiteboard behind
It's a
you.
mirror image.
It is, yeah, and we can't read
Help
it.
stop the spread, wear a mask.
What? Yeah.
Stop the spread word. Thank you.
I was
Yeah,
deciphering it while you were.
Is that backwards for you guys?
It is back
Yeah.
for us, yeah.
Your pictures,
I run it backwards here with my camera. I'm gonna have to stop and think why that is. So that looks stupid.
but the picture of the guy with the mask is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on that, guys. That's funny.
All right. So let's look at the April 7th, 2020 Selectmen meeting minutes.
I have just, those are the executive session minutes, correct?
Yes.
Yes. That's right, thank you.
Make a motion that we approve the April 14 regular session minutes.
I'll second that motion.
All right. So that's for April 14th? Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Can we get a roll call vote?
9.
Dave Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Mike Hughes, aye.
Kevin Morris, aye.
I would make a motion that we approve and release the executive session minutes from April 7th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Can we get a roll call vote?
9.
Dave Cortez, aye.
Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Kevin Morris, aye. All right. The only thing that I had last is, Dave, did you have a chance to reach out to Labor Council regarding the administrator's contract?
No, and I realized that when I walked in here. I will do that tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, I apologize.
No apologies needed. So, except for to Matt, because
Aye.
he's the one that's living in limbo right now.
I don't think Matt has anything to worry.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else? All right,
So we're meeting next week?
we are meeting next week, and it'll be a joint meeting with FinCom.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad we got your video and everything else all squared away, Tim?
Yeah, it's great.
All right, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
9.
Dave Cortez, aye.
Al Davis, aye.
Hughes, aye.
Kevin Morris, aye. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
See you guys.
Good night.
Be well.